being like here in Bismarck, we're really close to folks who've already made it with Blue Flint and Red Trail. And again, there will likely be refineries. I don't know if it's going to be Ohio or it might be South Dakota where they're not going to have these opportunities. The other thing too, and Steve mentioned it, farmers and industry have to respond to this, because if they don't, there won't be enough support to continue it. I mean, there was a lot of bold investments made with the Inflation Reduction Act, but they're not going to just leave this on the table if folks don't respond. And I look at the economics of it; it's pretty straightforward. I go back to, the question I always get is like, what's the price that the farmer's going to receive? And it's not quite, Blue Flint doesn't decide, the market decides. And so Blue Flint and Red Trail are in a unique position. So there's two of them. But even as just a no-till producer or an irrigated producer, somebody who has a CI score of 10, you have position. If everybody had a 10, then 10 would be 30. And so that's something to take advantage of. I actually have all 5 versions of GREET downloaded on my laptop, and I tinkered with them this morning because that's what professors do. But there's a lot to be built out and understood. The other thing I'd mentioned that we saw in 40B, and something that happens with federal policy, is the agencies rely on other federal agencies. So the IRS calls up folks at USDA and says, what do you know? How can you help us out? What should we do? And there's a lot within 40B, and I expect it will be in 45Z, where they're relying on NRCS. NRCS has a bunch of rules built out for cover crops. Why would the IRS do that? And so what they've very much done is said, if you meet the NRCS requirement, that's good, great. And again, when they did 40B and they had their buckets, the efficient fertilizer management practice was whatever the university extension in your state said it was. And again, 2 things that you guys already do, right? But again, a lot of those pieces are kind of out there, but the devil's in the details. And one, it's got to get done. But then once it gets rolled out, we'll see all of these things. I mean, the goal is very much to make this as easy as possible. But I would look and just kind of think about the whole geography. There's only a handful of corn ethanol refineries that are on geology. Just so you know, by coincidence, ADM's headquarters is on geology. They have a corn wet mill to make ethanol there in Decatur. It's like being born on third base. But it's a unique situation that you have with that. And again, too, if you stack what's unique about North Dakota, we have this geology, we have corn ethanol refineries, we have no-till. The one thing I didn't really stress, we also have Dakota Gas, which produces low carbon nitrogen fertilizer. The CO2 that comes from their process, if it's not put back on urea, which then doesn't help, that's putting a pipeline, goes to Saskatchewan, that disappears. And again, this is something we didn't even know or value. We have low carbon fertilizer, less than 100 miles from here, 50 some odd miles from here. And it's a unique thing. And to me, it's like, if you have all the ingredients, sometimes you make something. And there's a lot of unique ingredients in the state. Depends on the economics. That was a joke. I actually joked with Givo and said you should build the world's biggest corn ethanol refinery by far, right on top of geology. It would come down to dollars and cents that we don't know. But you think about the premium that Steve's talking about, as it might relate to production or to the refinery. If they can't get that, if you have, again, and this happens sometimes, you have some businesses that are so much better positioned than a bunch of other ones, what's going to give, right? And again, the refineries aren't, they're pretty uniform. It's like usually the folks who have a tough year, it's because they had no corn crop locally or something like that. Here you'd have a permanent structural difference. But we also kind of want to see it happen, because if it's just a couple of refineries up here in North Dakota, politically you might not have the support to keep the program in place like it is. I do joke and with farmers is like strategically there might be reasons why you might not want to see that built, but truth is there's many benefits even if you never deliver corn anywhere near the refineries that supply that CO2.
When you talk irrigation, would you, because of that, go out looking, building more, put up more pivots because of that?
If the economics are there, if there's 100 or 150 realized on 200 bushel corn for us, yeah, that makes a huge difference in CapEx spend for anyone, or for my farm anyways. So absolutely. And the other thing is, I mean, I've been advocating with the industry. We look at the soybean crush plants coming online. They say we got to 3x our acres in 3 years to meet the demand. How are we going to do that? How are we going to, if Red Trail doubles or we get a new ethanol plant built, how are we going to meet these demands, especially when there's a drought? And what risk for the industry that's built in this state? Because guess what? We've all seen droughts, in the east part of the state. How do we mitigate that? Irrigation. And we need support from the state. I've had conversations with Doug. I've said, guys, let's work with the Bank of North. Let's figure out how to develop more irrigation in the state. Because from our study that's coming out, Steve, what do you say yesterday? There's over 1 million acres, 1.5 million acres that can be developed right now on pretty good dirt with water that's adjacent or close to it within 2 miles.
One thing I want to add, and we've been talking a lot of biofuels, and I think it's appropriate and timely because of where policy's at, where agriculture's at, where the biorefiners are at. But don't forget about the food side. Again, because, in rotation or just being in the community, if you have this culture and these incentives to drive down that carbon footprint, that will be appealing to food companies, right? And so it depends, I think of dry beans, we have dry beans under irrigation, potatoes, and again, especially folks who are closer to their customer, they're going to realize benefits. It's going to be first and biggest by far in biofuels. And again, like I mentioned kind of in passing, it's like this might help underwrite the build out of the system, but it could be those other years in rotation where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm growing spring wheat, but this miller appreciates my carbon score, right? And I can get something from them. The great thing about 45Z is it's taxpayer. It's the law. It's going to happen. The number. And that can build out a lot. But as this all gets built out, like with the ratcheting, the private sector is going to be right there and try and take advantage too.
I think obviously we talked about these inset or offset carbon programs, these companies, right? It's really their sustainability goals that they want, McDonald's, right? Whoever it is, they want to offset something or inset something. But at the end of the day, what's nice, if we get 45Z, it's going to set the methodology to score our grain. And if we can get that to happen, then, because has anyone done Indigo? Anyone been a part of the VCS? I mean, you're familiar probably with that. Like, so if I've been no-tilling for the last 10 years, there's no benefit to me. I really need to have an adoption change today. So, like I say, the GREET, you can step into GREET, and it's year by year. It's year by year, by field level. So that's what I like about GREET.
Yes, right. It's the same. The 45Z is not a ethanol or SAF only thing. It's a clean fuel thing. And in fact, 45Z, one of the bigger concerns with 45Z is it's going to not only take 40B, if you heard us talking about that, it's also going to be the future of the biodiesel blender's credit. So right now, as of January 1, that's going to expire. But in the future, yes, it applies to vegetable oil, soybeans, and likely canola as much as, and in some cases, even more than corn. And again, because it's one, it's agnostic. Two, it's going to take over that biodiesel blender's credit, which without that, the economics of biodiesel production are really tough.
All right, early in, early out.
Also, as I was going to forget, North Dakota Farmers Union is putting on an event in February. I believe it's the 19th. I know Continuum Ag. If they haven't been invited yet, they're on the list because that was on the planning call yesterday. But anyways, that's a full day. It's producer focused to talk about carbon and the like. And so if that fits your schedule, please consider attending. It'll be essentially the third year that they've held something like it, and it's been very good. Again, farmer focused, but folks from industry and government, and a lot of good discussions in the room.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, a piece of housekeeping. The North Dakota water users, the water resource districts, and the North Dakota Irrigation Association resolutions final adoptions is going to be at 5:10 p.m. in the Hart Room. So 5:10 p.m. in the Hart Room for those final adoption of the resolutions. I think if there's no other questions or comments here, we're going to close it up and want to thank the speakers. Thank you all for attending and have a good evening.